we're really running an experiment here on an entire generation. It's like there's no control group here, right? It's like no ability to rewind. And the class of 2025 will either be remembered as, I don't know, a lost generation, or maybe even 26, because obviously this class will be remembered a lost generation or the first generation of the AI age. Hello, and welcome to Generation AI, where we demystify artificial intelligence in the world of higher education. I'm your host, Ardis, Kadiu, and with me today is my insightful co-host, JC Bonilla. Hey, JC, how's it going?
Hi, everybody. Happy Sunday, recording on a weekend, and I'm doing really, really good. I'm excited to be with you as always, talking all things AI and just basically trying to peel these exciting timelines, product recaps, but today is slightly different. Today is slightly human, right? Is that the plan for today? Slightly human?
That's right. That's right. There's today we're going to be focusing specifically on a bunch of reports around the AI's impact on work, the future of work, and current graduates as well. So one thing that I'm really excited about is to kind of unpack this different perspectives that are happening. But in order to do that, I just wanted to kind of do a little bit of a setup, right? Because it's really, really important. Every generation gets a defining technology. Our grandparents, well, maybe your grandparents, JC, got electricity, or great grandparents got electricity. Ourselves and maybe our parents, like, we got the internet. And how about Generation AI? The reason why we started this podcast, they're really getting artificial intelligence. And it's really a transformative force that it's rewriting the rules of work before they even start to play the game. So AI is affecting work and the workplace even before they start to play the game. This spring, there's going to be 4 million Americans that will graduate from college. And we've seen a lot of the graduations happening. And they're being told that they're entering the tightest labor market in decades. That's what we're being told right now. What they haven't been told is that they're also the first graduating class in human history competing directly with AI for entry-level jobs.
What a sentence. What a sentence. Can
Think
you repeat
about
that?
that.
Can you repeat that again? What a sentence.
This new class of graduates are competing. It's the first generation. They're competing, the first graduating class in human history, competing directly with AI for entry-level jobs. And that's what we're going to talk about today in Generation AI. We're going to explore this paradox, right? So we're in this really like this brink and greatest explosion of productivity and abundance in human history. Obviously, we're in that camp. I'm in that camp that AI is going to be this enabler. Yet for millions of what we call, young people that are graduating, the future has never felt more uncertain. And I think about this about my kids all the time. So how do we get here? Like, where are we headed? And then most importantly, how does the entire generation navigate this revolution that's happening at really the speed of silicon, I guess, if you want to talk about that.
Well, that actually breaks a few paradigms on Moore's law. But look, it's a powerful setup. Thanks for basically making it super catchy, and I must pay attention to this one as we unpack. And for our listeners, as you know, Ardis and I, if you listen to our podcast, you know that what we're here to tell you is this is really, really exciting. But the reality, and if you were to call it tough love, right, it's that these shifts in the talent market, in a way, are necessary. So preparedness, anticipation, and reality is kind of where we're coming from, right? And probably our angle, it's going to be a lot on this entry class, if you were to call it, on the talent pool. But the push that he brings to the current incumbents and to the current leadership, gigantic, right? So we'll try to also sing that, but or basically articulate the narrative around those things. But this is the first time I think that we have data and real reporting, as opposed to this is what AI is going to be doing against the talent pool. So it's a really, really exciting segment.
Exactly. Yeah. We're going to focus on a couple of different reports. The first one is from CBS News Money Watch May 2025 report. on graduates and kind of the numbers there. And then we're going to take a look at the SignalFire report, which focuses on technology, the state of talent report 2025, focusing on the AI. And then we're going to also talk a little bit more about some of the essentially the comments and the projections that futurists and leaders of this AI labs are making in the market. For example, Dario Amodei, which is the CEO of Anthropic, warning that there's going to be a 20% unemployment rate in the next few years happening here. So we're gonna talk a little bit about all of those things, and we're gonna kind of have a few different segments in here, and bring in some other voices as well as we try to digest that. But let's start with the number one. Let's kind of start with what actually is happening on the ground. And according to CBS News, they're seeing something unprecedented. College graduate, traditionally the most employable demographic, are now facing higher unemployment than the general population. So unemployment among 22 to 27-year-olds has hit 6%, exceeding the national average for the first time in 45 years.
I believe it's about 2 points exceeding the national average, right? So what this means, right, is that as you segregate the cohorts, right, it's a cohort that it's basically being more disfavored on this employment. So, and it's real, right? When you have a 2% gap, this is a real number on a base of about 4.5 or so, right?
And where this comes into play is that, this kids is basically, like, everybody's been told, you go to college, you get a job, and you get a good job. And that kind of contract is flipped on his head now a little bit, and we're seeing essentially these job postings requiring 3 to 5 years experience for level entry positions, and really creating this impossible situation, or maybe a catch-22. And when you think about it, also the debt trap is there as well. So the average student loan, about 37,000, and then there's really fewer paths to employment that can service it. So you can't really take jobs that are paying that minimum wage, or essentially you're going to college like that. That's an impossibility for you to take those service jobs. So what's happening is that there is a recommendation that, or an expectation from college grads that, hey, I need a white collar job. But those white collar jobs those entry level white collar jobs are just not there, and that's why you're seeing this 6% or higher than usual kind of this gap.
Yeah, and traditionally, this is not the case, right? So again, let's go back to the number. If our employment rate is 4.2, we're saying that for every 10 Americans, for every 100 Americans, 4 of them do not have an actual job. But if you are in that demographic, 26 to 27, fresh graduate, that makes 6 of you. And as you paint the picture, right, these 6 are also coming in with probably unexpected, higher than average debt, making it really, really a tough situation. And why is this a shock reality? Is that, as I mentioned, it hasn't happened before, but it breaks this notion of
45 years. It hasn't happened in 45 years.
It breaks the notion that go to college, go to a good college, put in your time, and you're gonna come out okay. Coming okay without a job and debt, that's definitely not okay. And that's really why it's possible in data, right? And we can go in multiple directions on what does this mean and the setbacks that is sends. But the first signal is, oh my gosh, it puts pressure, gigantic pressure on how colleges and degrees and the value that it brings on marketable social mobility aspects, right?
Yeah. So the rise of this recent graduate unemployment rate, the report states that it's largely part of a mismatch between kind of oversupply of recent graduates in the fields where business demand has just waned out. So we have this back and forth. It's like, how do you build programs, and how do you look at market demand and then build programs and then recruit students to fit in those programs? So it just seems that AI and some of these jobs, or the demand in these different fields, is waning down, and the folks aren't just, or colleges and the degree programs and so on and so forth are just not adopting fast enough. And we're seeing that acceleration of that waning down even further. So, as JC, if the CBS report kind of shows us the problem and what's happening here, we look at the SignalFire report, and it really shows us the cause of that, right? And we're talking a little bit about AI. So, when we see inside tech companies, a dramatic restructuring is really underway. You're seeing, large companies like Microsoft laying off 6,000, people, and then they're posting record kind of profits. Google, Meta, Amazon, they're all freezing or eliminating entry level programming, while competing viciously for kind of this senior AI talent, right? So the productivity and really why this matters is that tech has historically been an engine of economic mobility. Basically, it's been the most coveted jobs have been in technology around white collar, right? So it used to be fine, depending on where you are, right? Finance and so on, but technology has been, or tech job has been the most coveted jobs. And then when you're seeing this, it's like that engine of economic mobility for smart, ambitious young people. When that engine stalls, it just doesn't affect just Silicon Valley, but it also affects college computer science program, right? Like every now kid is like, well, my son, we were watching, or no, we were watching an episode yesterday, and actually it was the All In podcast, and they were kind of discussing this a little bit, or I forget what else we were watching, but basically it was stating that what we're going to talk about Dario Amodei today, like his computer engineering jobs are not going to be around, and you're not going to be around in the next few years. And he's like, oh man, that sucks. And we just asked him, we're like, well, no, what do you mean? Like, he's like, well, that's what I wanted to do. Like, I wanted to do computer engineering, and I wanted to do, and we just went into a conversation around like what that means. But this idea that you tell kids is like, hey, computer science and computer engineering and learning how to code. And really every parent now wondering if their child's STEM degree will really matter. It kind of brings that into focus a little bit as well.
Yeah. So from the Signal report, and I like your framing as if our CBS data suggests here's a problem with Signal. We start basically understanding how it connects and what's beneath that problem. This entry-level freeze has, for me, two important components. Traditionally, if you came out of college, I would say in a highly simple way, you had two paths, right? There's this classical big organization beat enterprise, call it the Fortune 500s. Just basically think about a good big organization, and they will take thousands of new college graduates and they put them into programs, and that coaching upward mobility will start in, and that will be hundreds of thousands. But at the same time, it had a cousin, and this is where the tech sector, specifically through the entrepreneurship, small startup, kind of starts doing things, and it hires hundreds of thousands, and it's in a really different experience. On one hand side, as an intern or as a new entry level, I am being coached and mentored against a program, versus on the other ones, highly exposure to risk and failures, right? And you get that acceleration. What is happening with this entry-level freeze is, right, all these kind of programs are frozen, right? For the notions that you just mentioned, right? So technology, should I get these hires? Should I just basically bring in AI to do it? But the second component is the geographical reshuffling that is happening, right, Ardis? That you start seeing that it's places like New York and San Francisco that you start kind of getting these AI hubs, and other places that traditionally would be doing really well, they're not. So also the talent market is moving, and proximity, right? Proximity matters as opposed to remote first. And I think that's another shuffle that is making then now more complicated for a college graduate, because it's about where I'm at geographically positioned. Going back to what I said before is I went to a fantastic school in the middle of nowhere. I was fine. Now, I went to a fantastic school near one of these talent hubs. It's interesting, right? Because the conversation is about proximity as well as it relates to remote. Why? Because of what AI in a way is empowering, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, what's really interesting, JC, is like that the way that I look at this, or when we think about that report, is folks are, as a company leader, right, and you're seeing it yourself, like the pressure on you is to how do we automate things, and how do we make things more more efficient, and how do we bring AI to kind of scale things. And it hasn't been ever before where you can take processes and you can learn anything essentially now, and you don't have to be an expert. Like you can AI can really, like, you don't have to go really deep into something. Like we've done that before. So now what really is valued is their ability to kind of work with these tools and to work with AI and to put that together. But we're looking for folks with experience, because it takes a long time to get them to actually use these tools effectively, and then also to amplify the work there. So everybody is kind of speeding towards that, and because that's just not there, the gap is getting bigger and bigger. So what you're saying essentially is like, hey, people who have experience are basically getting, even more on demand, and then but you can't get experience fast enough. So people who have a little experience are getting even more on demand. They're getting more experience and they're working on more crazy product and projects on AI, and then they're getting even more on demand, right? So it's like the gap is widening really, really fast. And that's where we're seeing it from a business perspective. So I don't know how that affects folks in terms of working in higher education, or sorry, in terms of kind of looking at a 4-year degree. I don't know. I mean, does the market just have an oversupply of degrees? And I don't know if the AI just it's exposing that inefficiency, right? We talked about that a couple episodes ago, where higher education is showing its cracks, so to speak, in terms of the learning of the product that they're putting out there. So now we're looking at it from a market perspective as well, and it seems like the market is kind of moving and reacting in that way as well.
There's something that I think, and we also have to be fair, Ardis, before I drop my point. I just want to call this out, that this data that suggests new recent graduates are struggling more than average, it's part AI, part not, right? So there's other factors at play, right? So,
Correct.
But
yes.
For the part AI, this is something that I'm going to join your statement with what I'm seeing on the data, right? What happens is when you expect entry-level employees to perform, there's an aspect of they need to learn, right? And they're not ready. And then you expect the more senior people to basically do that for them. So what the time compression the AI is bringing translates to the workplace as time to value. We spoke about that with Mike, how he thinks about in the classroom, now I don't have to give them 10 hours to do a project. They can do it in 1 hour. So does that mean 10 projects, right? So it's a really interesting viewpoint. In the workplace, you and I are managing teams, and we also put the sound pressure that you should be able to have this model faster. You should be able to do the data cleaning, the things that would take hours, and many times will be pinged to entry-level jobs to fail safe are being removed because AI is way faster at it. It still will fail. So what is happening is that the shift of the job, it's now taking these jobs, these functions, these roles from the entry level, and the generalist aspect that the entry level brought in kind of gets pushed. How is this matching the manager, and how is this basically now speaking to the person in college? The generalist will emerge. You need to be super fast, but there's something about being a technologist of how do I do data cleaning, and my program hasn't taught me that. I didn't go to school to do like data management, but today it's so easy to have these type of tools, this type of mindset, and knowing that it's about the speed and the time to value, so that managers and leaders can do it. That's how I start thinking about it, right? And it's a different viewpoint, right?
Yeah, I agree. I agree with that, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. So but let's, if you're thinking about this, JC, and if you're zooming really out on this, and Dario, he's Anthropic CEO. Like, if we're zooming really out to the big picture, and Dario Amodei, he's the CEO of Anthropic, makers of Claude, isn't just predicting disruption; he's also predicting kind of this doom and gloom devastation, so to speak, a 20% unemployment, which would rival the Great Depression, right? Because he's saying these AIs are going to accelerate so fast that the jobs and kind of the work that they're doing are going to be that. Now, why this matters is that CEOs of leading AI companies, if they're warning about this impact on AI jobs, should we really listen? There's obviously some agenda there as well. I don't truly believe that that's going to be the case, but it's something that's really interesting, and it was in the news and it was reported quite a bit, and a lot of folks have been reacting to kind of his predictions. We've talked about that before, where hey, 80% of the code is going to be written by AI. We're certainly seeing that trajectory, right? We're kind of going in that, but to have this kind of, if you think about the counterfactual to that, to have 20% unemployment, AI would need to drive 10% annual GDP growth, which is kind of crazy, right? And so I don't know. It's like job displacement with job loss is really interesting. So when we think about it, like technology typically creates more jobs than it destroys. It just creates different ones, and we've talked about that before on how 80% of the jobs that existed in 60 years ago, they just don't exist anymore, right? They're just different jobs today, like white collar jobs and computer jobs and so on and so forth. So the technology has transformed them. What might be different here is kind of the speed and the acceleration for that, and that's the part where we really haven't really seen that before. But I'm not sure. What are your thoughts?
Dario Amodei, he speaks in hyperbole, right? His prior statement
Yeah,
of 90,
yeah.
90% of the code will be done by machines, right?
In 2 years, right?
Right, in
Yeah.
2 years. So we also need to take this at face value that as a leader, he's doing a great play to also bring attention to what his core intent is. My company is AI and and as a frontier lab, he needs to make these statements. Having said that, somewhere between what he's saying, right, and today, that's the truth, right? Is it 15%? Is it 12%? And how much of that, the translation to that into GDP, real? So I guess my first take is somewhere in between, right? Second take is there's a world that we don't know that AI drives. And this is the behavioral aspect that we humans, we're just the best at adapting. Think about the 2000s, and we start looking at the era of internet and disruptions it's going to bring. And think about new media and consumption. How am I going to be spending and shifting? I don't know. Think about it. Back in the day, it was like an hour to 2 hours of how I read my newspaper to the print version, right? And then all these media outlets starting to come. This is 20 years ago. Fast forward to today, 2025. I spent 6 minutes reading news, and I'm actually getting that being fed by an algo. The behavior that has changed and how the attention has moved and the emergence of new financial models and things of a sort, how behavior and technology come together and something of news consumption now changes. That's literally what has happened with social media networks and internet and whatnot. So what am I saying? It's just going to be not a transferring of GDP. It's just probably new GDP, new services that we just haven't thought about. So what happens to the drivers that are no longer doing drivers and driving of cars because you have autonomous drivings? Do they just stop working? Probably not. They go to somewhere else, and then maybe that skill transfers, right? What happens to these cars that now are doing, basically driving passengers by themselves, right? And then also you start thinking, between stops, they can be doing something else, and they become the new logistical plane and things of that sort. All I'm saying is the world as we know it will change. AI will be a driver, and the disruption on the workplace is not as dramatic because there's an aspect of evolution that you and I don't know. And that's actually where I'm the most excited about, right? I'm most excited about the picture that nobody knows, that in 3 to 5 years, we'll start seeing like, oh, this is where this is going, right? Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. It does make sense. And look, I mean, to kind of understand kind of where we're heading, JC, we do a lot of listening to a lot of different influential voices out there and people that are actually building technology and are funding all of these companies. And there's a couple of people that are on the All In podcast that, that's one of the ones that kind of talked a little bit about this topic recently. Some of the feedback from that podcast, or like what I've kind of picked out from there, is a few things, right? Like, and you should probably listen to their latest episode, which is pretty good and goes back and forth around this. But what he kind of highlighted is, think about it this way: new grads. So Chamath, which is their ex person at Facebook, he funds a lot of companies and so on and so forth. New grads were the autocomplete of the past, right? If you think about it as AI as a really, really great autocomplete.
That's a great analogy.
Right? It's great, right? So it's saying, so right now AI simply does that better. So we don't need,
I need you to
new
come and clean
grads.
up. I need you to come and
Right.
clean up after me. Like, yeah, it makes a lot of sense. Great analogy.
Like, you don't need to do the report or clean up and all that stuff. Young plus AI native equals hireable. That was really interesting, where he's seeing that folks who are starting new and they're AI native, they're much easier to kind of accelerate their work, and they're much more hireable because they're using the tools, they're accelerating, they're producing more there. Whereas, technologists are people who are old. Oh, I mean, in the sense old, right? But just resistant, right? Old and resistant. So I don't want to be old in the sense that's like, we've been around in the workplace for a while, experienced.
Yeah.
They're usually resistant, right? Resistant to change because, like, hey, this is how I've done it, equals obsolete. So that's really interesting, right? This dichotomy of that. And then he's saying that the solution, what Chamath's saying is the solution, like, start companies or join startups or get left behind, which is interesting. It's like really like thinking new. Those people who are younger AI natives, like, you can't work for the bigger companies. You have to work for starting your own companies, join startups, or really get left behind because the bigger companies are not going to innovate, or they're not going to accelerate your or they're not even going to hire this level entry jobs, right? They're not going to hire because you don't have the 3 years to 5 year experience.
But you can have the same narrative, and as opposed to say young and AI native, as opposed to the human to the company, that makes you a startup.
Yeah.
Experienced and resistant, that makes you a big company. And then you start seeing that dichotomy of how, the activity and the action is going to be on these young companies, and that's why the match is so interesting. Very, very cool. I like this.
Exactly. And so Jason Friedberg was like one of the other people in there. Like I like him because he has like a really good counter. Very focuses on science. Like he's the science guy. And really he puts it into perspective. He's taking a big macro view of it. It's like every revolution creates more than it destroys.
That was my point before. Yeah.
Right, exactly. So deflationary effects, so everything gets cheaper. So AI basically makes everything cheaper, and it deflates everything, which we're now looking at that from that perspective. And of course, it goes into things like the capital and like where the money goes into higher ROI opportunities. And that's kind of the part that they talk about money, and they talk about, but that's not really interesting to our perspective in here. The one other perspective that's really interesting, that might be a little bit more interesting, is the effect of why Dario would probably say something like that. It's to kind of, raise more money, or to essentially, bring into focus his larger enterprise, to essentially raise more money.
Of course. Yeah.
And say, yeah. So that's the part that we're got to take with a grain of salt. But let's move on, right? So let's move on, because this show is all about, like, we're starting to get into some politics here, and like, back and forth around like the motivation for people to get money, regulation, get favors, and so on and so forth. But let's go back to higher ed and education.
The value of education, right? This really puts the eternal conversation of, do I teach, do I educate for placement? Do I teach and educate for the experience of critical thinking and the journey, right? So the journey destination. And I think, Ardis, the way I would kick this off is, we read that book, we've been in that conversation for years, right? Now, universities, I would say, are in two camps, right? They're producing graduates. They're not longer thinking about, research placement and faculty, and, that path is now, it's like probably 2-3%. And there's been an interesting evolution in the past 5 years of education plus boot camps and training. That has been moved, right? The point that I find interesting, as you start thinking about key points that you're probably going to bring curriculum development and inflation, is the cost of education gets amplified significantly, right? So let's go through your points, but where really my head is going is, if I want to pursue something that is not marketable, is not placing, right? Would I pay $150,000 for that? Right, because that's where I'm at, right?
Yeah.
The premium on the experience of education, which is super fun, it's incredible, is $150,000, right? $100,000, right? At the low end, we're looking at $60,000 a year.
Yeah, I mean, we're like, look, we're both kind of products of that education, where education is the great equalizer, right? It's supposed to be that great equalizer, but for a lot of folks, as you enter this new job market and this accelerated job market, it really becomes a trap, right? Expensive, outdated, and sometimes disconnected from kind of the economic reality that we're faced, and it can sometimes accelerate inequality rather than solving it. So I don't have an answer for that, JC. But the counterfactual to that, or you can look at it the other way around and say, hey, perhaps this forces a beneficial reset. And a lot of folks out there that are basically talking about the great reset in higher education and education, and it's like, well, what is that supposed to be? Maybe we'll finally see education that's kind of responsive, affordable, and aligned with actual market needs. Is that going to happen really fast? I don't think that's going to happen. It's like it's going to cause a lot of destruction in kind of its path. And yes, there's going to be really great models that are going to pop out of it, but creative destruction, it's not always comfortable, right? This whole idea. And in higher education, like we kind of have always the mentality of, hey, this is the way we've done it before. We've been around for dozens of years or hundreds of years in some institutions. Like, we're always going to be here. So this idea that something can really just not be around next fall, or your class will just not be there, or your class is not getting what they need, or employability of your programs, it's really going to have a big impact on that. And I don't know.
My counterfactual, right? And as we look at the signals, right? We know the curriculum is being changing, and AI is putting a lot of pressure, right? We've been talking about this credential inflation. A master's is no longer what a master's is, and the whole alternative paths of boot camps and certificates has been putting a lot of pressure. Universities' response, we know, is slow, but they're reacting. So how do I put it all together as a counterfactual? I believe the university is they're slow in response, but they adapt. And the adoption, it's going to put one of the skills that universities do really well, and I'm not talking about alternative paths like boot camps, universities do really well, which is critical thinking. I find today that if you know the tools, which are easy to get, learning AI is very easy. You no longer need a boot camp. You can literally just have AI teach you how to use AI. Is that type of deployment? But critical thinking, it's prime, because we see it that when you do something without being thoughtful and understanding how it connects the dots, you end up with nothing. Even though it's fast and it's AI powered, right? So
Yeah.
I like to say that universities may not be in the path of destruction, but there's something that gives them an opportunity to come out. I wonder what's going to happen with alternative paths, certificates, and boot camps, because they were niche to that kind of entry level, and this is where AI is doing wonders. And that's where I think the pressure is going to be the highest and the most intense in the coming months.
I mean, it's some practical advice here. So, like, what's a new grad to do, right? Like, I don't think the successful ones aren't waiting around for the world to change back. Like, it's not changing back. It's really hard to put this genie in the bottle. Like, they have to change with it. And when you think about this, it's like, like, it's not just kind of, again, career advice. It's kind of a generational divide that's being created right now. So those who adopt early will thrive, and I believe that those who kind of cling to the old models will struggle. So if we look at it, like, what are the things here that we can make a practical AI?
Double down on your basically digital nativeness and become AI native. That's the first thing, right? And I think that it's very easy for someone who has grown up with Discord groups playing video games to basically jump into a wagon of being AI native. Just double down on that, right? That means you use every tool, everything is automated, and you're literally trying to do it 10x, 15x. That's
Yeah.
how
You have
that's
to
how AI
show them
native is.
10x productivity, right? Exactly.
All the time. Double down on your upbringing, if you will, right? Be AI native.
Yeah. The one that's really dear and near to my heart is, look, skip the line, right? Just forget
Excuse me.
about the Fortune 500 or kind of the big
Oh,
guys or the consulting companies and all that. Target Series A, target startups, or really just start your own, because that's where the value is going to be created and that's where the capital is going to flow in that value generation. It's not the, hey, we're going to optimize this large companies to get more profitability, so I'm going to make a name for myself. You can see that jumping into those companies, that the bottom level is, or the bottom rings of that ladder is just completely disappearing. So it's much harder for you to get there. So just target smaller companies that are much more agile and they're much more eager to kind of, or just start your own. So that's one of my advices.
yeah. This one is closer to me. This idea of control chaos, right? My career has been the one that I've moved between 3 and 5 years for the past 15 years, right? And what I found is that it puts a lot of growth in my side, vocabulary, experiences. I've had the privilege to work with you. I had the privilege to work with other CEOs, and you all are weird, awesome humans, Ardis, and I learned so much from you, but other people. So I know we've been talking about this. Other people have been talking about, you move around, but this is something that is, you embrace that control chaos, right? So job security is dead, right? It's about adaptability and no longer it's time bound, right? So think about what AI has done to us in terms of adaptability. You come to this podcast every week and we tell you everything that we told you is change, right? And it feels the same way. It feels the same way in the workplace. Right now, we're driving our teams crazy because you, as a leader, you come and say, we didn't get it perfect. This is how we're going to get it perfect, right? And then guess what? Every other company or category is doing the same thing, right? And then people are like, what do you mean? We've been working on this for the past 3 months, 6 months, a year, whatever. And they're like, yeah, next play. That's very, very hard. And I think AI in your educational experience should be grounded around what adaptability, and it's always about how exciting and the opportunity that it brings.
Yeah. And one of the areas that, it's, if you're kind of looking and you're starting to think about like where, just find the gaps. And what that means is like look for human plus AI roles, not human versus AI. So human plus AI, right? That's the areas that are going to be really, really important. And so if something can be, replaced by AI, it can be done by AI, or a human does it better. So like writing, for example, it's like, so those are the areas that you got to start thinking about.
Artist, can I insert something very practical for everyone, all of you interviewing, looking for human and AI roles in that sequence? How about your next or your last interview question, right? When I ask you have any questions, bring it forward. Hey, dear interviewer, how have you used AI lately to improve your life, right? How are you seeing AI benefiting your personal life? It's a
Yeah.
great conversation because what it tells you, these people get it, right? And the last thing I'll tell you, many things on finding the gap. Many leaders who say that they use AI, they don't, right? And it's a good way to start thinking, oh, they get it. And if you are in this sequence that we fit, if you're AI native, if you embrace, you're built for adaptability, and you find these gaps, those type of questions will tell you this is the right place for me to come and do my thing.
Yeah. Yeah. Exactly. So, I mean, here's what keeps me out at night, JC, right?
Which one is it today?
We're,
Which one is it, Ardis?
yeah. Yeah. I mean, we're really running an experiment here on an entire generation. It's like there's no control group here, right? It's like no ability to rewind. And the class of 2025 will either be remembered as, I don't know, a lost generation, or maybe even 26, because obviously this class will be remembered a lost generation or the first generation of the AI age. So I don't know. It really depends on what we do and how we think about this. And of course, this kind of a big statement, but it keeps me up at night because my kids are going to be moving to college in the next few years, and I'm starting to think like, what is that going to look like? What are they going to think about? People who are coming out of college today, like this, they're AI natives, maybe, but like, how are they going to fit in the workplace? It just keeps me up at night because it's moving really, really fast.
From what you're saying, for students, the old path is closing, right? So for anyone, for educators, revolution or irrelevance, fight against current, go with the current. You got to choose quickly, right? Policymakers, you got to balance the protection with progress, or you lose both, right? And for everybody else, this is just basically, this isn't someone else's problem, right? We're in the center of it, and as you mentioned, no control groups, meaning this is the challenge that we have as we belong to this incredible experiment. So,
yeah.
I feel we need to end with something positive here, though.
The positive thing is that, there's like the stuff that we're talking about, maybe we have a little bit more time. But if you're listening to this as a student, a parent, an educator, or just anyone who cares about kind of the future, you can't be passive observer, right? The passive observation has gone away. If you're a leader and you're going through a digital transformation or AI transformation, if you're thinking about, you can't be a passive observer. You have to act now. You have to, begin, and then because you're behind, right? The future of work is really being written now. And everyone has the role in kind of writing that. And that's the way I think about it, from the educators that are in the classroom to university presidents who are kind of bringing AI to their universities so they can be more productive, to improving the student experience, to the programs they're designing for students, to the company leaders who are employing this new team members, to the managers who are kind of guiding them, to parents who are driving their students on what degrees do they want, to the actual graduates. It's like, come on, you have to, kind of participate in this. And the last soundbite, I mean, I want to bring us down, but a little bit. But last year we had an episode where we said, AI is not going to take your job. Someone who's using AI is going to take your job. I don't know if that's true anymore, man. I mean, I'm pretty sure that's like we've crossed that chasm today. So
we're saying we're loud and clear saying that it's happening today. So
yeah,
prepared. But more importantly, we're prepared and we have the upper hand on this one. We can make it happen. So here's my I don't know if it's positive or not, but here's my final thought. Industrial revolution, digital transformation, the internet era. And I can come and give you 7 other examples of how a revolution has taken place in the workplace.
Technology revolution, yeah.
Sure, right? We're in the midst of one. So know that this is happening and be part of this chapter that we will read 5 years from now, 10 years from now, how it changed. Just the way the industrial revolution or the technology revolution or the internet revolution, whatever you want to call it, change lives in the workplace today. We're in the middle of it. Jump in and help write it. That's really, I guess, my message and what I take from all these type of things. So,
right. Well, I think we ended on a positive note. It's or maybe caused a lot of anxiety for sure. But
there you go.
This is interesting. Like, it's always anxious. Like, everybody's very excited. They're graduating. Lots of graduations this past couple of weeks that we've seen. And now we have to figure out what's there for that future, and hopefully, we can provide a little bit of a context here as we see it from Generation AI.
With that, Ardis, thanks for driving, and it's been a pleasure.
All right, till next time, everybody. Generation AI is part of the Enrollify podcast network. If you like this podcast, chances are you're going to like other Enrollify shows too. Our podcast network is growing weekly, and we've got a wide range of marketing, enrollment, and higher ed technology shows that are jam-packed with stories, ideas, and frameworks, all designed to empower you to be a better higher ed professional. Enrollify is made possible by Element 451, the next generation AI student engagement platform that's helping institutions all over the country create meaningful, personalized, and engaging connections with their prospects and students. Learn more at element451.com.